GM, we are live. GM, everyone, welcome back to the SolanaFloor weekly recap. I'm joined, as always, by our senior journalist and author of the best Solana newsletter, Finn Miller. GM, Finn.
GM, Jack, how are we getting on?
We are getting on perfectly. And of course, the wonderful Mr. Thomas Bahamas from just across the pond, GMTV.
GM, doing good over here. Happy Friday, all.
Excellent Friday. Hopefully it's going to be a calm weekend. Now, it's been a big week. As always, we are going to chat through the biggest headlines of the week, everything that's shaping the ecosystem. Gents, I want to do something a bit different this week, though. Give me one thing from this last week or so that's blown your mind, or something that you absolutely love, or something monumental that everyone sort of needs to be aware of. Something that caught my eye this week was the rocket, unfortunately exploding. The Blue Origin rocket, I forget the name of it now, but a huge explosion. Somebody said it was about 20% of the size of the explosion of one of the nukes that the US dropped back in 1945. So big explosion. Luckily, no loss to human life. But over to you.
Well, look, for me, it's got to be Champions League final. You know, I'm not a football fan by any means, but I do love a spectacle. So anytime you've got, you know, millions of people all fixated on one event, it's going to attract attention. You know, Arsenal, Paris, I believe. So two historic clubs for a historic event. Yeah, all of Europe is going to be watching this weekend. Thomas, what are you thinking over there in the US?
Yeah, you know, we got the World Cup coming on. We're getting ready for that pretty soon. So I'm excited to watch some soccer myself. But what I've got going on, so mine's outside of crypto. What I've been doing lately is I am back in the gym. So I took about 6 weeks off from the gym, and this is my first week back, and I'm feeling great. If you guys are watching this stream and you're not working out or moving, oh man, get out there. It is great.
All the Europeans listening to this are like, "What? It's May. May, June. Nobody goes to the gym. We're hanging out, drinking coffee, and having beers at the pub."
This is holiday season here.
It
Come on,
is.
Tommy.
It's holiday season, except for anyone working in this industry. Of course, there is no time off. You mentioned football there. I'm going to complain a little bit. I'm going to vent. I heard through the grapevine that the finals this year, that are going to be held in the US, obviously, are going to have a 30-minute halftime show, sort of like the Super Bowl. I'm quite pissed off about this, if I may be so blunt, because you never have 30 minutes in between halves in football. I think it's just an Americanization that a lot of Europeans are going to be frustrated with. The Brits are understandably fuming. What do you think about this, Finn? Is it acceptable behavior?
It's just not football. You know, it's perverting one of the most historic sports to a commercially capitalist venture over in the US, which is, you know, what we might expect from our cousins over across the pond.
Oh
Hey,
dear.
you got to make
TG,
it
what do you think?
interesting somehow. You know, you got to attract the Americans somehow, and that's what they're going to do it by.
Well, I hope it works out. It's a change. We like new things, but maybe don't mess with the beautiful sport of football. Anyhow, before we get into the biggest stories of the week, let's look at the prices, because it's been quite a volatile few weeks, to say the least. Sol this week briefly dropped to $80. We don't love to see it, but it sort of makes sense in the grand scheme of things. Bitcoin touched 73K, meaning Michael Saylor is now down about $2 billion. He's in the red again. ETH is back at 2K. It did briefly slip below 2K for the first time since February. I have a feeling that has something to do with the Ethereum Foundation's reshuffle, if you want to call it that. Quite a few big names have left the Ethereum Foundation in recent weeks. And of course, Bankless host and longtime Ethereum bull announced that he sold all of his ETH position as well. So the largest Ethereum DAT, which, as you know by now, is Tom Lee's Bitmine, is down somewhere in the region of $6 to $8 billion. Not a great look. But Solana DATs, of course, are also in fairly bad shape. Most of their entries, it turns out, were above $150 per Sol. Now, on the other side, I have to say this sort of gives me a bit of comfort thinking about it in these terms. All these digital asset treasuries are holding millions of Sol. You put it all together, it's billions of dollars of Sol in total. And when I think about it in those terms, the sort of current Sol price at $80 becomes less of a concern for me. But zooming out, the sell pressure that we saw largely came from BTC ETF outflows, but I'm happy to report that was fairly rapidly absorbed by the market. So that's good news. We're seeing some resilience. We're seeing some conviction over in Wall Street and the men in suits. Also happy to report that Solana ETFs performed fairly well. We had $58 million of inflows last week, and that's the strongest inflows in 21 weeks. So institutions are clearly not going to be sitting around waiting for price to sort itself out before building their positions. They are DCAing as aggressively as they ever have been, which should give us something to hold on to. I think Hype, on the other hand, is still at all-time highs, around $62. Zcash, though, did have a bit of a sell-off. Last week, it was trading at about $670. It is now down to $540 a pop. So interesting things happening over there in the privacy world. Now, zooming out even further, though, the macro world is messy. Trump made some comments about Iran. There was a bit of a sell-off. Then they said they're going to do a deal with Iran. And then there was a $75 billion market recovery within hours, right? These are genuinely insane times that we live in. A single Truth Social post or a post from Donald Trump or words from his Oval Office can move crypto markets to the tune of tens of billions. We already know this. But then it moves futures markets to the order of hundreds of billions of dollars. So crazy, crazy things happening out there. But let's refocus our attention very quickly on the things that matter most to us here in Solana land, because yesterday we spoke with Polygon Labs CEO, who argued that Solana is trying to win too many battles. Now, that interview is now trending on X. If you want to learn more about his thoughts about how Polygon is aiming to bring all money on chain, and perhaps even more urgently, if and when Polymarket is going to leave Polygon, then go and check out that conversation. It was very opening for Thomas and I. Now, Finn, as I pull up your newsletter here, over to the both of you for a quick vibe check. Where are we?
I think we're much in the same place we've been in recent months, in that crypto users are giving up. You know, crypto market natives are turning their back on the industry because we're not seeing the same kind of returns that other industries are seeing. And what's been most alarming with a lot of this is that, as you mentioned, a Truth Social post can pump or dump markets very rapidly. And when it works in favor of TradFi, their assets pump. But for crypto, it doesn't actually change anything anymore. You know, we're seeing these violent moves in TradFi. We're only getting downward moves now in crypto. You know, I think the other argument here is that people are tired of Trump's posing all these, you know, market close posts that pump over the weekend and then dump into Monday's open, or vice versa. They're playing out in TradFi. They've stopped playing out in crypto. We're only going down at this stage. We were up around 82K last week before, and we're still really struggling to get back to that level. So people are starting to throw in the towel, I think, is my read. Thomas, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, people are definitely getting tired of it. I mean, the prices are struggling, right? You know, little things are moving the market, and to watch, you know, stocks rip just like 10x on multi-billion-dollar, you know, market caps is insane. So it's definitely tough out there. I think Michael Saylor might have just sent $30 million to Coinbase of Bitcoin. So maybe he's going to be selling, and maybe that's going to nuke all of our bags, or maybe not. I feel like we might have already priced that in. I know that he's been talking about that for a little bit. So I don't know. You know, I feel like it's tough to root for Bitcoin these days, just because like we have to monitor what Saylor's doing, what his latest Ponzi is. And it's just like a strange market out there. And, you know, all coins are kind of downstream from that. But yeah, I mean, it's not the best market right now. And I mean, I feel like things can turn around on a dime.
Just quickly on that then, I think this is a very interesting conversation, right? Because I saw some fiery debates happening in other podcasts and news publications, and some were saying this bear market feels significantly worse than others, but if you look at the fundamentals, it's actually much better. And then there was a very strong argument against that was saying, no, this is objectively worse, because we've never seen such a decoupling of price and fundamentals. So they were essentially having the same premise for the argument, was leading people very strongly in two different directions. I'm curious, personal note, does this bear market feel worse to you guys? And do you share that sort of premise for the argument? I mean, it's terrible out there, but I'm still somehow cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, price-wise it does. But like, look at all that we've accomplished. I think that that's the hardest part, right? Like stable coins are in the news, that people are arguing about it, in, you know, all the regulators are arguing about it. They're pro crypto. And, you know, that we get all these RWAs out, you know, tokenizations happening, all of this stuff is happening, and yet none of it's being reflected in the price. I think that that is like the biggest disconnect. So if you're following, you know, what's actually happening on chain, what's going on, you know, how many transactions there are, what people are doing, it's like people are using it more than ever. It's just very hard to make money, which, you know, a lot of people in crypto are here to extract as much money as they possibly can. So I think we're seeing a changing of the guard, where a lot of it is like, all right, if you were, you know, here to bundle meme coins and, you know, take whatever soul you can and leave, like, you're probably not able to do that as much anymore, right? So I think that a lot of the extractors are the ones that are in the most pain. And the worst part about that is they were usually the most followed and loud people on Twitter. So you see like them in like desperation mode. I can't make money on meme coins anymore. This industry is a scam. Where it's like, if you're an investor and if you're looking at what's happening and you're thinking about the long term, like, this is what you want to see, right? Like, you want to see all the milestones that we've hit. So there is a very big like disconnect in the market, and you know, it's sad to see, you know, people leaving, but there are people packing up and leaving, and you know, maybe those are the people that weren't actually, you know, the real believers and that really believed in the tech. They just believed in the ability to scam people, basically.
Yeah. My view is a lot more succinct. I think that this bear market is infinitely easier than the last bear market. And there's a very simple reason why. And that's because in the previous bear market, Sol dropped from around $250 to $8, which was horrendous. And this time we've dropped from around $240 to $80. So, you know, the drop has been a lot more manageable. It's been a lot easier to handle. This bear market doesn't feel anywhere near as difficult as the previous one, which saw Luna, which saw FTX, which saw Three Arrows Capital all collapse. We haven't really had any of that apart from 1010. So look, I think we're going to be okay.
I think we're going to be okay as well. Now, with that, let's dive into Finn's juicy, spicy, informative, sometimes hilarious, very pointed newsletter. A very quick reminder, as you're seeing on screen here, you can earn up to 8% on your Sol through the Sanctum app. If you haven't got that and you have a seeker like the three of us here do, then go and download that app. It's a great way to get 8% on your Sol. And if you don't have a Seeker, then don't worry, because there is an iOS and Android waitlist, and you can sign up to that through this link as well. Now, Finn, walk us through the intro. You've got some spicy framing here. What's the premise of your argument before writing these 6 juicy stories this week?
Well, this kind of hammers on the point I was making earlier, is that it doesn't matter if Sol is $8 it's $80 or $250. The builders are showing up. So we just finished up the Coliseum Hackathon. The latest Coliseum Hackathon was the biggest ever. Actually, to be honest, I feel like we say that every time. Every single Coliseum Hackathon has a new all-time high in submissions, but this time they really blew it out of the water. I think the exponential growth of how many teams are building in these hackathons is absolutely enormous, and hopefully that means that downstream we're going to get another 2,000 apps hitting the chain in the next few months. So very exciting. Off-chain global markets are in absolute chaos. Trump is jumping all over the place. He's saying he's going to be there watching the Knicks, and then he's calling out Iran, and he's saying that we're going to close the strait again. So look, it's absolute chaos. Markets don't know what to do, and people are starting to get a bit tired, I think, of this back and forth. And hitting on-chain, look, Pump is going multi-chain. I think this is something that people have been waiting for a while. I remember a few months ago, maybe, some eagle-eyed sharpshooters saw that they were registering domains on other chains. That's finally materialized. So very, very curious to see how the trenches are going to react to this long term. Otherwise, Solana is still the everything exchange. We are leading Hyperliquid in the foreign token spot race. I think this is a under-celebrated achievement that Solana is really nailing. So I think we should, give a bit of love to that. And finally, SIMD 525, which is a rather stealthy governance proposal, is going to be great in many ways. It's going to boost performance. We're going to get our slot times down to 200 milliseconds. But the risk that comes with that is that some smaller validators might get hit pretty hard. So a lot of nuance happening in this week, I would say.
There is a lot happening. And with that, let's dive into story number 1 here. As you can see, the headline is largest crypto hackathon ever. As Finn mentioned, the Solana Frontier Hackathon sees 2,857 submissions across 108 countries. Super interesting timing on this. I think people are talking about this AI brain drain, right? Saying all the developers are leaving crypto, all the builders and the founders are going to go try and build some AI stuff because that's where the funding is. Valid to a certain extent. Meanwhile, we have an all-time high in hackathon submissions here in Solana, which we love to see. And a slight side note here, just yesterday, Simon and Eno highlighted some of those hackathon winners over in the Solana ecosystem call. So shout out to the Sol brothers for their coverage. Now, Finn, some interesting themes and patterns emerging from this article about the categories that were sort of most in demand and where the builders are focusing on. Walk me through it, and what's actually happening with this most recent hackathon?
Yeah, so look, the headline writes itself. We've got 2,857 projects from 108 countries applying to the latest Coliseum Hackathon. That is absolutely extraordinary. You see this graph, you see that the demand for spots in this the amount of people wanting to ship products on Solana is exponential, and it's moving in the right direction irrespective of price. The last one Sol was at $179, and we got 1,576 submissions. This time Solana's dropped down to around $80, and we've got 2,857. So the builders don't care about price. The builders just want to be building cool apps on the most performant chain that exists in the world today. More excitingly, AI, consumer apps, and DeFi protocols are still the most popular choice for people building. I think it makes a lot of sense. We talk a lot about internet capital markets. Trading is, the fundamental financial use case for crypto, so it makes sense that DeFi is really driving a lot of that adoption. But I'm excited to see consumer apps growing there as well. So a lot of great things come out of this hackathon. The grand champion is going to walk home with $30,000. There's also a $10,000 public goods award and a university award for another $10,000. So look, there's a million reasons to join these hackathons. I think for the winners, they also get allocated to Coliseum's accelerator. So you have some of the greatest VCs in the Solana ecosystem on your side, on your team moving forward. So very, very exciting. There's been a huge amount of development in the AI platforms and agent sector. So Thomas, I know that you're quite deep in that field. Have you had a chance to look through some of these hackathon projects yet?
I really haven't dug into these as much as I want to. Like, I want to play with a bunch of the different agents. I think that's going to be fun. I want like the autonomous trading agent, and I want it to somehow make money for me. But I mean, I love everything about this, right? The builders are building, more builders than ever. We have a bunch of, AI fears, and are people leaving, are leaving for AI. But actually what people are doing is, with AI tools, they're able to build a lot of like really good projects out of it. So I think it's easier than ever to build for a lot of people. I think there's, just a lot of hurdles in the way. So it's been hard to build for crypto, where it's not as hard, I think now. I think the next part is going to be, building the right products that people want, getting users, getting traction. So these hackathons are, not only are they kind of filtering down to the best potential products, but they're also going to help fund them and get them to market. So I think this is awesome. Also, like the diversity of, who's actually submitting these, I think is fantastic, right? I always, in my mind, I always think of Solana as like people around me, San Francisco, California area for some reason, because that's where like a lot of like the tech stuff happens, but it's so global. I love seeing this. I think there was 441 submissions from India, 299 from Nigeria. And it's great to see, first of all, everyone's building, right? They're building in different regions. And I also want to see what they're building. Like, what are they building for in these different regions? It'd be really interesting. So I love seeing it. We want to see more of these. I love checking out all the new apps on the Seeker. So it's like, and I think that's what a lot of people are doing too with the Seekers, right? Like you're kind of like, maybe you're kind of farming the new apps, but also it's like, you just get to go play with what the latest people are building. So I think
It's
that
such a great discovery platform. Honestly,
really
every day there's updates. By the way, milestone for Solana Mobile, the whole Seeker ecosystem, they crossed 1,000 apps.
No
I
way.
think yesterday, sometime in the last 24 hours. It was 940 on Wednesday. So that's how quick the app count on the Seeker is increasing. If you're a developer, it's great for you. If you're someone trying to discover new apps in the Solana ecosystem, it's great. In terms of distribution, it is unparalleled. You make something, you're very quickly going to get to your first 1,000 users, hopefully 10,000 users if you get the traction. But it is a great distribution platform. And as Finn was saying, maybe before we got on, the number of apps that we're going to see proliferating through the entirety of Solana through this hackathon, this Coliseum hackathon, surely you can expect to see at least 1,500 to 2,000 of them emerging very, very soon. And there were 2,587 submissions this year. So this exponential trajectory of apps and developers is surely set to continue. So
yeah,
really exciting stuff.
There's something quite important, I think, that Maddie's pointed out. So Maddie, who is the founder of Coliseum, has said that, as scary as it is, and as much as we talk about this AI brain drain and how nobody wants to build in crypto anymore, AI has actually made it easier than ever to build in crypto. So if you're someone with no technical background, but you've got some great ideas, all you really need to do is, fire up your Claude or fire up your ChatGPT and start bouncing some ideas off the AI, and all of a sudden you can have yourself an MVP shipped in a week or two. So it's never been easier to start building on Solana, I think, and we're seeing that with the number of hackathon submissions that are coming through now.
Absolutely, it's super exciting. I know, TB, you've tried your hand at shipping a Seeker app. I'm honestly, every time we talk about not just the Coliseum hackathons, but specifically the Seeker ecosystem and the builder energy there, I'm thinking we might as well use some of these AI native tools that are available and just maybe vibe code something for the future of agentic commerce. I don't know. It's an exciting thought that one man with zero technical background can essentially vibe code an app, and then people might come in, and so if you open source it, people might come in and fix it for you. It's a very, very exciting time to be in the Solana ecosystem, I think. But really the chart that matters, the chart that matters most, I think, is as Finn was saying right at the beginning of this conversation, we started at 91 submissions in 2021, and now we're at 2,857 submissions. Price chart is sort of a roller coaster, but yeah, the builders are clearly not leaving, and that makes me happy. And TB, you're on that sort of builder bandwagon as well, eh?
Yeah, so you got to check out Seeker Maxing. That's my app. But my app, whatever. It's small, like not that many people use it. But the fact that I was like able to go through all the motions to do it makes me appreciate other apps that absolutely nailed it. It makes me appreciate them that much more, and to see like what it takes on the other side. And to see what people have been building is awesome. So I want to keep this going.
Absolutely. Now let's move over to story number 2. This one's characteristically spicy, of something that makes the cut into Finn's newsletter. The headline, as you can see, is Pump.fun goes multi-chain opening the door to Ethereum, BNB, and other EMV chains. Question mark. What do they mean by other EMV chains? What's going to happen? What's going to happen there?
Yeah, so as we know, Pump.fun, the super viral, sensational meme coin launchpad on Solana that has been Solana's most successful app for the past 2 years, is spreading its wings. You know, the guys over there are embracing the multi-chain economy. Their trading app is now connected to other EVM chains, so we're talking Ethereum, Base, BNB. I believe Monad is there as well. And look, the Pump community is responding really well. You know, Pump has this this terrible curse that whenever they make any announcement, you know, people are invariably upset with them. And this time I feel like they've nailed it because people are reacting well. The possibility of, you know, trading not only on Solana, but also on other chains like Ethereum, like Base is very exciting for a lot of people. And I think it's important that they have done this because there's nothing worse than being sidelined by the app that you use. You know, we were all on Solana. Everyone on Solana was pretty much sidelined when Ethereum's asteroid absolutely ripped a few weeks back. Pump wants to bring the best coins from all the other ecosystems and make them tradable for people who only really trade through Pump.fun. So I think this is a brilliant move.
Just before we get
gas costs
too,
well.
sorry, Finn. Just before we get too caught up, I know people are going to come into the comments with this question. We've seen a couple of them on X as well. Some community members are questioning last week's news from Pump, which is that they announced USDC pairs, right? And people saying, oh, they're moving away from using Sol. So is this sort of announcement that they're going multi-chain now, does that mean they're really no longer going to be using Sol as their trading currency? Has anything changed specifically in terms of their reliance on Sol as an asset? I think that's the main cause of anxiety from some of the community members.
I don't think that's the case. I think that might have been blown out of proportion a wee bit by people who understood that they were moving entirely to USDC and that you know,
right.
pairing tokens and Sol was no longer an option. It's an optional switch. So if you're launching a coin on Pump, you can either choose to put it in Sol or in USDC. And I think ultimately, while USDC offers perhaps better conditions, you have more stable price floors, you have a lower floor and a higher ceiling on where coins can go. Ultimately, I think the trenches are going to decide what they prefer, and we're going to see the trend move towards either Sol or USDC, and people are going to see which works better for them. I don't think that Pump is abandoning Sol by any means. I think they're just trying to expand their TAM and they're trying to get more people trading on the app, which honestly is their right, I think.
Fair play. Well, people, whatever it is that Pump says, someone's going to turn around and say, no, this is bad for my bags, or where's my airdrop, or why have you sold so much Sol? So I feel like it's reasonable, but it is incumbent on us to sort of air these concerns. TP, does anything stand out to you as objectively great, as objectively net positive for the Solana ecosystem? I know Alon here said another step towards making the Pump.fun app the greatest place to trench on the go. They're sort of expanding their reach. What's your take on this post specifically and what it means for people that have only ever really been on chain in Solana?
Yeah, so for them, I think this is bad for Solana. You know, like not like horrendous, but I don't think this is a good thing for Solana specifically. You know, I think that Sol will still kind of dominate a lot of the volume here. I mean, it'll probably, you know, have like a direct comparison between the chains, which would be interesting. But I also think this was inevitable, right? Like I think that they were kind of always planning on doing this. And I think it's great for Pump and it's good for users too, right? You know, like I don't really use other chains that much, but I tried out the Base app again recently and I was going to look at that VVV coin and it was a miserable experience. And I just closed the app down and said, why do people use this? But, you know, maybe this Pump app is good enough to where it's multi-chain to where I could just go on there and buy a coin on Base and not have to think about, you know, the social media aspect of it. So I think it's really good for users. And I mean, we've seen some runners on other chains go off. So, you know, this gives access to them. And I mean, if Pump didn't do it on these other chains, you know, a competitor would come out on them anyways. So it's definitely interesting. You know, I want to see, you know, 6 months down the line, like, where do we think this is going to be? You know, like, where do you think the volume's going to be? You know, I've heard about, oh, there's a runner on Base, you need to check it out. But it's like the occasional one where it's like, hey, look at the volumes. It's always been like consistently on Solana. So was that just Pump being on Solana, or is that the users that are on Solana? So
I do wonder, and it sort of ties into that conversation that we had with Mark from Polygon Labs yesterday, right? We asked him, if and when Polymarket, which accounts for 60% of all volume on Polygon, would essentially outgrow the sort of constraints of being on Polygon as a chain. And he said that he basically has no doubt that 12 to 18 months from now, that Polymarket would either be sort of launching their own chain or migrating elsewhere or doing something similar to Pump, which is a multi-chain strategy. But the idea is that if you get to a certain size, and Pump arguably has, then you need to keep expanding. That's just sort of the law of growth for these companies that are generating hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue. So that checks out to me. By the way, for our audience members that haven't seen that conversation, go and watch it. It's a very, very eye-opening conversation with Mark, the CEO of Polygon Labs. But yeah, so this, I suppose you accelerate that and you extrapolate this conversation even longer. Does Pump need to launch their own chain at some point in the future, or is there enough room for them to grow into being multi-chain?
So I think this is like the perfect example of abstracting the chain away, which we actually talked about with Mark yesterday, right? So they're building a payments app and it's basically multi-chain. You can use whatever chain you want behind the app, right? So this is basically what Pump is doing. And this is kind of what people have been talking about for a while, right? We get to certain speeds, certain blockchains, once they are actually usable, abstract the chain away and you just use the app. Right? The app layer, the app that sits on top of the chain is actually what is going to be more valuable. So I think we are seeing that shift, right? So I think that is, Pump has been a fantastic product. They have brought in almost 800 million, over $1 billion, I think. They brought in a ton of money, right? And so it is the app that people are going for, not necessarily the chain. But Solana's always won on the retail side because it's been faster and more usable, and the users are there. So it's interesting. Finn, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what you guys have been saying. I think, counter to what a lot of people have been saying on Twitter, I think there's nothing more bearish for Solana than this idea that apps have to stay on Solana if they want to succeed. I think you reach a certain point, you hit breakout velocity, and you have to expand, as you were saying, Jack, and you have to kind of continue to grow beyond the confines of where you began. And I think this actually becomes a success story for emerging founders. I think there's nothing better than seeing that this app that started on Solana ended up growing out and becoming this, wider world sensation. If we gatekeep builders and say, yeah, you can grow, that's great, but you have to stay within Solana and you can't break out of these boundaries, that's not very encouraging to people who have got world domination on their mind. So look, I think it's great. I think it's a positive step. I think a success for Pump is a success for Solana long term. And I want to see this do well.
Another interesting angle there, I guess, is Phantom, right? Which was, arguably this sort of breakout app that emerged as one of the major success stories in Solana land. They spread their wings, but still, to the best of my knowledge, a vast majority of those revenues are made from Solana wallets, no?
Yeah, primarily yes, but a lot of that revenue now comes from trading perps on Hyperliquid. So there's an argument there that expanding has been incredible for Phantom, and for me, it's a shame that there was no Solana perps decks able to offer a similar experience to keep that value within the ecosystem itself. But again, you don't want to hinder growth. You don't want to tell people that they have to stay within a lane because these are 0 to 1 founders. They want to take on the world. They're not going to accept constraints like that.
Yeah, and there's also something too when you go multi-chain, you have to factor in like, all right, they're spending a lot more developer time on building for these other chains and not necessarily building in the latest and greatest features for like their core audience. So like me personally, like I don't use Phantom Wallet that much anymore. Where that was the primary wallet that felt like magic when it first came out. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen to Pump.fun, and I don't see it, but that could be a potential problem. But if we could get Phantom to switch to Phoenix or a perps dex on Solana, then we know that we're competitive, right?
Send them an email, TB. Send them an email. Make it happen. Solana's doing all this work, building the best on-chain perps dex experience possible, known to mankind. Get Phantom back involved. Do you think it's feasible, or is it a pipe dream?
I mean, it'd be nice if it was possible. And Phantom's great too. I don't want to talk down on them, but
of course not.
I mean, that would be like the real flippening if we could get them back, right?
Yeah, fingers crossed. All right. Speaking of, we do have to move over to our next story. This one is going to ruffle a few feathers. Finn, you've been looking very deep into the Solana's small validator landscape for quite some time now. This latest SIMD 525 is the number. The headline is it's going to boost Solana performance, but at what cost? Seems to have ruffled a few feathers. We don't want to see small Solana validators getting thrown under the bus. I get the impression from reading the article that it's not so much the proposal as it is the method, the debate, and sort of how quickly other validators are trying to get it passed that has caused a bit of a stir. Finn, I'm going to let you take the reins on this one because this is right in your wheelhouse. What's going on and why are people upset? Do they have cause for concern here?
Yeah, so this is a very nuanced story with a lot of moving parts. So I'll keep it pretty high level. Basically, SIMD 525 is an internal governance proposal that wants to drop slot times from 400 milliseconds to 200 milliseconds, which ultimately the downstream effect is Solana performance gets boosted. Everything goes faster. Our slot times are twice as fast. MEV drops, transactions get finalized a lot faster, and basically Solana becomes incredibly more performant, which is absolutely necessary, and nobody can deny that. Everyone agrees shortening slot time is for the benefit of everybody on Solana. The downstream effect of this that people are, concerned about is that while we're reducing slot times in half, we're actually doubling voting costs at the same time. So anyone who's a smaller validator, anyone who's got less than 100k stake on their validator is going to be pushed even further into losing money, essentially, because it's expensive to run a validator. And if you don't have a certain cutoff of stake, you're basically running at a loss and you're doing it for the love of the game. So if this passes before Alpenglow also goes live, a lot of smaller validators who are, community contributors, they've been here for many, many years. They do a lot of incredible work across the ecosystem. They're going to be pushed into unprofitability, and it's going to be very difficult for them to keep the lights on. So that's kind of the overarching theme. More of the nuance is that the powers that be, the guys over at ANZA and Solana Foundation, they want to get this pushed through as quickly as possible. They don't want this to go to a large-scale vote where validators and stakers can all weigh in. So they're trying to get this across the line as quickly as possible without making a big kind of song and dance about it, as we've seen with other proposals like 228. Again, Layer 33 is pushing back on that. They say there needs to be some kind of intermediary force or intermediary subsidy program in the middle that cushions the fall for a lot of these smaller validators. In a perfect world, Alpenglow goes live at the same time that that SIMD 525 goes through, so the net zero costs is relatively unaffected. At the same time, Alpenglow has been delayed before. The article says there that some people were expecting it in February and that has not been delivered on. Totally says that it's all going to be bundled in together at the same time and there's going to be no damages, but smaller validators are unconvinced at this stage that they're going to see the support they need to maintain, at least a baseline of revenue generation during this transition. So the argument comes down to this.
You mentioned, the small guys. Is this the crux of it then, that Layer 33 sort of TLDR, that the small guys end up subsidizing Coinbase? That's a very inflammatory statement. Does that speak to the core of it?
Yeah, it essentially comes down to the fact that if this happens, if SIMD 525 goes live and Alpenglow does not go live at the same time to cushion that fall, there's going to be a period of a few months when smaller validators are basically subsidizing the earnings of the larger validators, and we're chewing out around 40% of the smallest validators on the network who all do an incredible job, so that Solana can continue to scale and move faster. It's also important to note that Solana needs to stay competitive. We're facing huge amounts of competition from other chains. Bolstering performance is critical to maintain that competitive edge that we have, and the conversation now becomes, is shaving off a few of our smaller validators a sufficient price to pay to have that greater good achieved? What's the price for sacrificing smaller validators at the shrine of IBRL? Lots to unpack. Thomas, you've been around for a long time. You know a lot of these community validators. What's your angle here? What's your knee-jerk reaction?
Yeah, this is a tough one, right? So overall, I want to IBRL, right? We're the fast chain. This is an upgrade to make it faster. Let's do it. But I mean, a lot of these smaller validators are like long-term communities that have been helping out Solana. And I mean, to be honest, they're probably struggling right now. It's not the best time to be a community on Solana. And I mean, is this a slap in the face of those communities? It could be viewed as that. But, on the other side, to remain competitive and remain at the front of this, I think we need the speed, and I think we want to be competitive and outcompete people. So I think that we need it, but it also would be nice to, let the people vote and get consensus on this as well, right? That was one of the parts, right? They're just going to push it through without a vote. Was that what they were trying to do?
That's what they're attempting to do, and there's been a bit of pushback from independent validators who are saying, hang on, let's rein the horses in a bit, let's talk about this, and let's see if we can't at least find a temporary solution. So maybe that's the Solana Foundation delegation program stepping in to subsidize a lot of these smaller validators who might take a hit. Maybe there's other alternatives. I share your view in the sense that we do need to maintain competitiveness. We do need to IBRL, but I feel like there must be some ways that smaller validators can be accommodated in this transition. Tim Garcia, who's the validator relations leader at Solana Foundation, said that the best thing that small validators can do to ensure that Alpenglow goes live at the same time is to join the Alpenglow community cluster. By contributing, by helping give feedback, helping testing, you expedite the process of bringing Alpenglow to mainnet as soon as possible, and that's the difference that can be made by anybody to make sure that we A, IBRL, and B, protect smaller validators. So I think that's the best thing you can do if you're a small validator at this stage. But it's a nuanced conversation, and I don't have all the answers, I will admit.
Yeah, in the long run, this chart at first sight does look quite worrying, right? Solana's validator decline continues. If you think back to 2021, I guess the earlier days, a lot of the criticism that came from the Ethereum maxis, the decentralization maxis, was that aside from the fact that they said, oh, Solana's a VC chain, it keeps going down and all that kind of stuff, that it wasn't sufficiently decentralized. And it seems that decentralization sort of peaked at some point. And then now over time, as you can see, it is being sacrificed for grander ambitions like IBRL, which in today's world, if Solana is to compete in the perp scene with names like Hyperliquid, which Finn mentions in his article here, is aiming to become the house of on-chain finance, then I do think this is a strategic decision. It's a calculated decision. It's a trade-off. And unfortunately, in distributed systems and distributed networks, trade-offs have to be made. And it's almost impossible to accommodate the needs of everyone. So yeah, I have a feeling, I have a gut feeling that this will sort of continue declining, and it will hit a minimum point, at which point everyone will sort of say that we can no longer continue to decline Solana's validator count. That's just my feeling. I know people have very strong opinions about this. I know there's really, really intelligent people, economists, mathematicians working at Anza, Max Resnick as an example, who have the numbers behind these arguments. So if you are curious about Solana's declining validator count, about Solana's decentralization woes, then go and listen to him. He's probably a great source of authority for this. Now,
yeah, and Jack, before we go to story number 4, I got to bring this up too, right? So with Hyperliquid success, like, do people care that much about decentralization? Like, is that what people want, or they just
some
want
people
speed?
do?
It shows that people want speed, and I mean, Hyperliquid only has a few select validators at this point, where Solana has, it's like in the 800s.
True,
right?
But Hyperliquid also has like 11 employees, and they're now basically all billionaires. Like, Hyperliquid exists in a sort of vacuum. I think it's safe to argue that what they've achieved is incredible and worth sort of tipping your hat to. To what extent Solana wants to emulate that success, it remains to be seen. But what we don't need to do, I would argue, is sacrifice almost all the decentralization in order to achieve that. There's probably other ways of getting to that point.
And it's a spectrum.
What the smaller validators would argue.
Yeah. And there's another layer to this, right? And that if, as many people have said, if US regulators come out and they say, look, Hyperliquid's great, but you need to KYC on there because it's not sufficiently decentralized, all of a sudden, all these bricks come crashing down. Now, that's not necessarily an inflection moment. That's a make or break for something like Hyperliquid. But I think being sufficiently decentralized is going to become more and more important from a regulatory standpoint in the future. So that's also worth keeping a finger on.
This is part of the discussion that's been going on around clarity in the various Senate hearings as well, right? People are saying, look, if we are to limit yield sharing, because that's what the big banking lobby wants, they want to protect their own bottom line. Understandably, we don't like it, but that's what's happening. Some of the pro-crypto senators have come out and said, let's have very well thought out legislation that essentially doesn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We don't want to be limiting properly decentralized networks and decentralized actors in the name of limiting the ability of centralized actors to share yield with stablecoin depositors. So as you said, Finn, so many layers to this argument. I have a feeling it will get even more heated the closer we get to the November midterms, which we've been talking so much about on this channel. With your permission, I'm going to switch over to story number 4. because we've been talking about Solana versus Hyperliquid, and this is the crux of it. Headline: Solana outpaces Hyperliquid in foreign token spot volume. Now, foreign token volume sounds interesting. It's something that Trump might be talking about, right? Foreigners, but it is, of course, non-native tokens. So as you can see from Finn's delicious newsletter, it is, once again, about Solana versus Hyperliquid. We've been talking about this for a long time. We will continue talking about it. All the effort, all the energy, all the love and the passion that's being poured into Solana's perp scene at the moment, I think warrants long discussion. And I think part of the reason why it excites me is, again, because of this conversation that we had with Polygon Labs CEO yesterday, Mark, now making the rounds. Now, his core argument, the clip that sort of went semi-viral, is that Solana's trying to win too many battles. It sort of got misconstrued. People took a very small part of that clip and made it sound like Mark was very passionately arguing that Solana is objectively the best at all things that it does. That's not quite what he was saying. He was actually saying Solana is trying to be the best at all these things, but it should pick one spot, for example, and win at that. Now, before I get too carried away and talk for too long about that conversation, Finn, talk us through, give us the data, and then TB, I'm curious if you agree with Mark's point from yesterday that Solana is trying to win too many battles. But let's tie it back into this Solana versus Hyperliquid argument.
Yep, absolutely. So as much as we talk about how perps being the make or break moment for a lot of chains, that you need to have a hyper competitive perp sticks if you want to even be worth people's thoughts in crypto these days. Let's not forget that Solana is the premier venue for spot trading in all of crypto. It has been for over a year. The execution is unparalleled. The speed is unparalleled. If you want to be trading on-chain, there is no better place to do it than on Solana. And if you want to be trading off-chain as well, Solana still beats out Binance and Coinbase on all this trade execution. So look, that's been made more and more clear as Solana envisions this everything exchange thesis. Foreign token weekly DEX volume share has climbed to 10%. This was around 3-4% a few months ago. And what it tells us is that people are trading everything on Solana. They're not just trading Solana. They're not just trading meme coins. They're now trading Bitcoin. They're trading Zcash. They're trading Ethereum. They're trading Monad. They're trading Hype on Solana, an increasingly larger size. The volume share for foreign tokens is growing. And that basically tells us that people are choosing to trade on Solana over rival networks where they might have deeper liquidity. It's very encouraging. And it's a considerable edge that Solana has over Hyperliquid at the moment. We talk a lot about Hyperliquid perps. Hyperliquid also has a spot market, and Solana is absolutely eating it in terms of the volumes and the volume share happening there. The interesting graph here, though, is that spot DEX foreign token volume by blockchain is actually dominated by Base. This was really surprising to me because when I think of Base, I don't think of people trading CBBTC. I don't think of decentralized trading of Bitcoin on Base, which, as we know, is a Coinbase offshoot. So this stat did alarm me, but if we take that aside, Solana is well and truly dominating on all of those volumes. So very encouraging. I think, as mentioned earlier, the outperformance is incredible. There was a beautiful Blockworks report written by Sam Schubert, which basically said, if you're trading on Solana, you are getting the very best fills. Your execution is outperforming any other chain or any other centralized exchange. So I think with time, we're going to see more and more volume. We're going to see more and more liquidity move over to take advantage of this. Market makers want to be on Solana over any other chain. And that's going to start a flywheel of that. It's going to only continue to drive activity to Solana. So very, very encouraging. Let's not over-index on the fact that Hyperliquid has won perps. DeFi is very much also the spot market. So Thomas, what's your knee-jerk reaction? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I absolutely love this. So trade everything on Solana, right? I am like the biggest fan of this narrative. And look, you can be a Solana maxi and you can hold Hype or Zcash on Solana. And I mean, when it comes down to it, it's like my portfolio is 99% in spot, right? So I trade spot, I hold coins, right? So why not trade it all in like at the venue that provides the absolute best option for you? There was a great article by Sam Schubert from Blockworks talking about just like how good the rates are. And, it was a fantastic article. And then I think Titan came out with their numbers, and it's like these spreads that they're getting on like through their Dart product are unreal. It's so small that like you're basically not paying any spread. So I mean, with those options, like just like right in front of us, it is like we have it so good on Solana that we can trade any of these. and Jack, you brought up Mark and the too many battles. And okay, so first of all, like he gave Solana so much praise in that clip, which is fantastic. But I think when it comes down to it, we can have it all, right? Like for some reason, him and a lot of people think that it all comes down to whatever the Solana Foundation is pushing, like they run all the projects, but that's not how it works, right? Like they're providing like the best infrastructure and the best environment that they can for businesses to run on Solana, right? You know, the fact that we can compete in all of these different areas means that we 100% should. You know, it's just getting the right teams to focus on it. You know, I mean, they can provide marketing pushes for these, but ultimately it comes down to like, hey, if you can build a prediction market on Solana, somebody should do it, right? You know, they should go after it. So yeah, I know that was kind of a lot, but we didn't even really get into that yesterday because
we didn't have enough time, unfortunately. I wish we could have spoken to Mark for hours and hours. He's got some very interesting plans about how they're going to bring all money on chain, which I suppose to a large extent aligns with what Solana and Hyperliquid and some of these other chains are doing as well. But in the grand scheme of things, we want more capital to be on chain. It's faster, it's more efficient. You mentioned something interesting there that I just want to go back to very quickly. You said if there is a single place that you can place all of your trades, hold all of your positions, then that is probably going to win. And we know that Jito is building something similar to that, right? JTX was announced recently. It looks to be like it's shaping out to be one of the best trading experiences on chain. It reminded me when I saw their promo video of, I think 2020, 2021, something like that, trading on Webull. And as a Euro poor, having all of these dashboards that I could sort of modify. And it was this big modular setup that I could, have on an extra monitor. I could see all the sectors and all the things that are happening in the macro world and then place my trades. That was a pretty eye-opening experience because there was no European product that sort of came close to that. And the impression that I get from JTX is that it is moving in a similar direction. But curious what you guys make of JTX.
Look, what I think is going to be most powerful for JTX, Jack, is if you want to scroll up a wee bit to the Sam Schubert tweet that's up here in this article, I'll be able to make my point a bit better. So if you look at this graph here, just down a bit further, you can see Jupiter CBBTC to USDC fills. Now, you look at this, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You're seeing a lot of squiggly lines, a lot of charts, and the data is telling you that you get a better price when you trade on Solana over a centralized exchange. Now, JTX is going to make that abundantly apparent to anybody who is trading on it. Every time you close a trade on JTX, it's going to tell you how much you saved by trading on Solana as opposed to trading on a SEX. And then over time, that's going to stack up. And I'm very confident that with time, we're going to see that traders have saved hundreds and thousands of dollars on their trades, on their execution, just by using platforms like JTX over something like Binance, even in VIP 9 tier. So I'm very excited for what this is going to look like when it does finally come out. I think we've been under-indexing on the importance of spot markets for a very long time, and I hope that JTX is going to bring that back to the forefront for the average Solana trader.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what they do with JTX, right? Like they've built a lot of infrastructure on the back end where it's like you don't necessarily interface with Jito very often, but I mean, they're legends on Solana, right? Like they've been building on it since almost the beginning. So to see, them come out with, one product that people want to trade or that people are going to be able to trade on, it sounds like they're going to have spot and then eventually have perps on it as well. So I'm really excited about it. And also shout out to their team because they have been so bullish on Solana lately. It's like I see anybody from their team tweeting about Solana, it's contagious, right? It gets me bullish too.
What about value accrual? If you venture out into the world of crypto podcasts, you're going to hear a lot of VCs, a lot of investors talking about what TB was mentioning earlier, this sort of chain versus app thesis, and value accrual is a very fundamental part of that discussion. Why would I invest in a token when I can get equity? And we're sort of moving back into that TradFi-esque way of investing and then getting returns on projects and products. Finn, where do you stand on this JTX plan, this sort of single place to trade all assets plan as far as value accrual goes? Is it net positive?
I think it's going to be an incredible revenue driver for the entire GTO network. So as we know, around 80% of protocol fees are going to be directed towards the GTO token. The leftover 20% is going to go to ongoing development. But there's also so many other value accrual revenue streams in the pipeline there as well. The BAM Maker plugin is being run by about, I think, 6 of the 8 top prop AMMs on Solana at the moment. As soon as JTX go live, I think there's going to be a huge amount of people trading on it. That's only going to, get the flywheel spinning even harder, and we're going to see more and more value go through to the JTO token. So yeah, I'm very optimistic on where that's going to go once JTX trade goes live.
Yep. Zooming out, I think it's clear that Solana is quote unquote the best place to trade anything and everything. It seems to be that it really is the whole ecosystem's North Star at the moment, which we love to see. Now, in the interest of time, though, we are going to talk about story number 5, which again is about trading on chain. This time, though, it's collectibles. I did not see this coming. I was very, very blindsided by this headline, which is Collector Crypt hits $1 billion in volume as Solana trading card frenzy accelerates. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, you've definitely seen these videos of fairly young people going to these IRL events, these conventions, and they're trading, let's say, baseball cards, Pokemon cards, to the tune of 10, 20, 30, sometimes $50,000 a pop. I find this quite insane, but then again, most of crypto is relatively insane compared to the real world. So finally, the idea that all of this can be done better on chain is not so much of a niche idea. Finn, talk me through the story here. Did you see this coming?
I saw it coming, but over a much longer time horizon. I didn't expect that Collector Crypt would be such a breakout success. I think obviously there's a huge premium on nostalgia in general. A lot of people of our age, a lot of millennials, they've grown up, they've found themselves a bit more money, and they want to start allocating into things like their Pokemon cards or baseball cards of their childhood. So, look, I think the desire to regain a bit of that value for people who find themselves with a bit more free capital is very enticing. I think the Gacha loop of you put in $50 into the vending machine, you get out a random card, you can sell it back to try again for a more valuable card. I think that's a very sticky way to be trading these kinds of assets. And that's obviously been a massive success for Collector Crypt. The Solana's second most valuable application in terms of revenue generation at the moment, trailing obviously only Pump right at the top there. But they've crossed 50 million cumulative revenue, after doing $1 billion in volume. The sky's the limit for where this is going to go. I do have some skepticism on the trading card game bubble in general. I don't know how sustainable it is outside of our little crypto world. There's been some absolutely insane sales. The Jake and Logan Pauls of the world have been, selling these cards for millions and millions of dollars. I don't know if this is a top for TCGs. Maybe it's just the beginning. The jury is out for me. I don't really follow the space enough to have a very educated opinion.
In terms of token price, right? Cards, as you've written here, is up 391% in the last 2 months. I think it's like 50% up on the week even. So just like this chart here with their net revenues up and to the right, I think for a $45 million market cap token, it's doing very, very well at the moment.
It's doing incredibly well. There is still some concerns. It has a much larger FDV. The float is quite small. At the moment, I believe there's actually no kind of value accrual in place for their cards token. But, out of the offices at Collector Crypt, they're saying that they have plans. Things are in place. They're trying to buy out VCs, I think, who, have a large allocation of tokens already. And they're hinting that there'll be some kind of value accrual in the future, whether that's buybacks, whether that's managing a treasury of cards as well. I'm confident that they're going to deliver on those promises. I think that we're going to see Collector Crypt continue to succeed. The only flag on this is, we don't know how long this TCG craze is going to last off chain. So that's kind of where you need to be keeping an eye on, I think, if you're running this. Right. At the end of the day, the underlying infrastructure is very good for Collector Crypt. They've done an incredible job.
Surely new names are going to be seeing this success and trying to emulate it in their own way as well, right?
Well, we're seeing dozens of other TCG adjacent products with their own Gacha pools and things like that cropping up. BZ was a base heavy variant of this model. They've bridged over to Solana. We've got Fidgetils on the rise as well. So look, it's a market in its infancy. I think it's only going to continue to grow. And hopefully, competition between these different platforms is going to rise the level of what we're seeing of competitiveness across these platforms.
There might be some boomers out there listening to this thinking, you know what? We went through this with Beanie Babies. in the late 80s, early 90s, and everyone said, hold on to your beanie babies. They're going to be worth thousands. And I think they're trading hands for like, what, 25, 30 pounds a pop at the
Take it
moment.
easy
So-
on us boomers. Take it easy on the boomers. Yeah, I like this. So I like this TCG. Like, this is a new meta that I didn't really expect. You know, I heard that some of like the meme coin chats, people were like trading Pokemon cards a while back, and I was like, what are you guys doing? But I mean, the volume speaks for itself, right? That it is being very like heavily used right now. And I guess I need to try it out at this point. But you know, the other side of it too, there's like people borrowing funds against their cards. Like I think that is hilarious. It reminds me of like NFT lending. It's the good old times, right?
To be fair, I think that's the biggest unlock for this whole TCG craze. You know, this
really?
is something that the on-chain economy provides that the real world cannot provide. If you want to try and borrow capital against your TCG cards in the real world, I think you're going to have a much harder time. I think on-chain economy alleviates a lot of that friction. And if you are sitting on a $1 million card portfolio, it's going to be a lot easier to start sweating those assets and start collateralizing and borrowing against that on-chain. So that for me is the biggest story to come out of this whole shift.
So it becomes easier to take risk on an already risky asset.
Precisely. But look, if you're holding a TCG card and it's gone up, 50x in the space of a year, I would feel pretty happy if I could collateralize a borrow at 60% of that loan to value. And at least in that case, if the price drops back down, then I've kind of secured myself against that. Like I've got the USDC borrowed out. I know that if it crashes to zero, I'm kind of taken care of. So yeah, if I was sitting on $1 million card portfolio, I would be borrowing against it. Absolutely.
Is it like NFTs where basically like what people were doing with NFTs was they were basically just like levering up, like, right? Like they were like lending out their NFTs, borrowing, and then buying new ones? Or is this just, they're just pulling some off the table?
Looping, leverage. I mean, you're underwriting
Financial
massive amounts of
alchemy.
risk. Yeah.
We love that.
Absolutely. Maybe it's my mid-curve take here, but if I was sitting on a collectible worth $1 million, I probably wouldn't be borrowing against it. I depending on where I bought it, I'd probably sell that thing and sit on stables for the time being.
We say that, but how many times have we round-tripped meme coins or round-tripped NFTs? And
we're not having this conversation,
like,
Finn. We are not talking about the bad decisions I've made.
I'm not going holier than thou. Like, we're all human and we all make mistakes.
No, valid. Very valid. What is also valid is that we need to talk about story number 6 because people are frustrated. Finn, the headline here is Solstice reaches $500 million TVL one day after TGE as Anchorage Digital invests in SLX. Anchorage Digital is, of course, a huge, huge name. And you've also written after a controversial, in brackets, aren't they always TGE? But I think the community sort of missed some of the nuance in this. I know there were some last minute changes that weren't communicated perfectly with perfect clarity. But shout out to Pablo, one of our journalists. He's been in contact with the team and he's sort of gone straight to the source and found out what some of these friction points were about. So yeah, again, shout out to Pablo. Finn, talk me through what's going on here with SLX, because I know the token price was also very volatile.
Yeah, it's been a big week for Solstice. Solstice, as we know, stablecoin issuer on Solana. We've got a huge cohort of very loyal fans that they've accrued over the course of this go-to-market for them. The token launch, obviously, as they always are, as they invariably are, ruffled a lot of feathers. A lot of people were expecting a certain range of vesting conditions that were not honored. Solstice had to make some last-minute changes, and as you mentioned, they didn't quite communicate on everything, so that caused a lot of dramas for a lot of people. I think the overarching theme and the thing that people were most upset about was that when they originally got the allocations, they were promised that it was going to be completely available 100% at TGE, apart from a few larger holdings who were going to be vested over a longer period of time. Now, what ended up happening was that a lot of people didn't actually claim their original allocations. So a lot of those flares and a lot of those coins actually got reallocated back to people who had registered. So people found themselves with much larger allocations than what they had originally been given, which obviously is fantastic for everybody involved. And with that in mind, a lot of people had crossed over into the tier in which their coins would be vested instead of made completely available at day one. So I think that was the biggest issue for a lot of people who were involved in this. They got more tokens, but they had to hold on to them for a wee bit longer. Yeah, as you mentioned, Pablo, one of our journalists at SolanaFloor, got in touch with the team, and they explained that there's so much news coming out that they wanted to kind of let the dust settle, and then they can do all their communications after that. And from what we're seeing on chain, people are not losing their faith in the Solstice app in general. So normally after TGE, everybody pulls their capital out of things like this. It's mercenary capital. It wants to rotate somewhere else where it's going to get rewarded differently. Against the grain of what normally happens in these circumstances, Solstice is actually growing its TVL. So they've got a slew of institutional allocators who are bolstering their DeFi pools there. TVL is up to 500 mil, and Solstice is basically proving the haters wrong. So you love to see it. I love to see it. Thomas, what's your DeFi brain telling you for all this?
Yeah, it sounds like the farmers are no longer furious. Is that right? It seems like they got the increased allocation a little bit, which is good.
But the farmers were still furious. They
always
furious. They were still
these
furious.
farmers, they're always furious.
They're furious because they had to hold on to the tokens for a wee bit longer. I think that's fair. Give me more tokens, but make me hold on to them a bit longer.
I would take that trade. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's good, right? I mean, Anchorage Digital coming in, I mean, I think that's pretty big, right? Like that lends some credibility to SLX, right?
Oh, it's a huge vote of confidence. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, they're also bringing the STRC, the strategies product on chain, which I think is interesting. You know, I want to be behind this stretch move, but like it's a tough one to get behind. You know, what's your guys' take on this one?
I mean, you said it right at the top of this conversation. Supposedly, allegedly, reportedly, 30 million was moved to. Is it a Coinbase account? A centralized exchange?
Coinbase Prime or something.
I mean, that's cause for concern. So if that's happening, beyond the immediate price impact, I think what we sometimes under-index on is the sort of knock-on effects, the amount of social capital that someone like Michael Saylor has. If he says something or does something, it creates this massive ripple effect of other people doing it, trying to front run him, trying to make sure they don't end up holding the bag. So yeah, I am waiting. I'm waiting very, very calmly on the sidelines, watching what Michael Saylor will do.
I don't think 30 million is a very significant sell for Michael Saylor, especially for
It's
asset
not.
like Bitcoin. Like that's going to get absorbed very quickly. I think he's testing the waters to see how the market reacts in the event that he does sell, because obviously Michael Saylor's been saying for 100 years now, it feels like, that he's never going to sell, and he's just going to keep stacking Bitcoin, and the numbers are going to keep going up. Eventually, he was going to have to realize that profit somehow. He's got investors that need to be fed. I'm surprised that people are reacting like the way they are. Look, ultimately, this was always going to happen. We need to see a Michael Saylor sale go through and have very limited impact on the market, so that we can then move up without this fear that Michael Saylor is the kingpin of Bitcoin, and that that's
a hot take.
Going down.
Finn says Michael Saylor should sell.
He absolutely should sell. Look, we need to see that one person can't have this much influence.
Yeah,
I like that. You're gonna definitely upset a lot of people with that, but I think it makes sense. It is in many ways holding people back. There's of course so many things that are holding people back, right? I mean, go back 5 years now, and you could very easily have made the argument that one wallet was a major roadblock, and now there's so many macro influences, so many headwinds, from Kevin Warsh to the war in Iran, that are also very serious influences on crypto price. But I'm inclined to agree with you that if he does, and we sort of deal with it, we weather the storm, then skies are likely bluer. TB, should he sell? How much should he sell? Let's send him an email.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, hopefully he doesn't sell much more than this, but yes, I mean, he has too much power over Bitcoin right now. I feel like Bitcoin's a mess. It's like they got like the quantum mess with nobody really building, some sort of like real quantum solution. They've got Saylor. I feel like if you're like a solid, like hardcore Bitcoiner right now, you're just like cheering Michael Saylor on, which like doesn't seem very like cypherpunk anymore, right? Like it just kind of seems like the institutions and the suits are selling Bitcoin ETFs, and some people seem to be buying it, and Michael Saylor just keeps ripping billions into it. So I don't know. It's a weird market right now.
It's so weird.
I hold Bitcoin, so I should say that, but I'm not very confident in it.
It is so topsy-turvy. Now, in the interest of time, we are going to switch over to my favorite part of Finn's newsletter every week, which is the honorable mentions. Then we have the stat of the week. Then we have State of Solana in a tweet. Now, I'm going to make a wild guess here, Finn. And I'm going to say there's going to be at least one Jupiter announcement in here. Am I right?
Like there's always going to be a Jupiter announcement in the honorable mentions. It doesn't matter. We're going to go to the end of time. We're going to go to a time when Bitcoin is $1 million, when Sailor has 50% of the supply, and Jupiter is still going to be shipping product announcements that will make it to honorable mentions. So look, obviously we'll get to that in a bit, but I'm going to get cracking right from the top of the list. This week's honorable mentions: Exponent V2 goes live, launching with flagship markets, strategy vaults, and a $200,000 rewards campaign. Orca launches permissioned RWA trading infrastructure in collaboration with StreamX. SoFi brings 14.7 million banking customers on-chain with its SoFi USD stablecoin launch. Umbra launches private token investing in collaboration with Streamflow. Jupiter Order Book goes live in public beta. Y Combinator startup Totalis launches prediction market parlays settled on Solana. Dominion unveils Silv, a tokenized redeemable physical silver. And over 4,000 Seeker devices have been purchased with SKR. Good list, Jack. Throwing it to you first. What do you like?
Look, I like so many of these. Honestly, one of the harder lists from which to pull a favorite. I love the fact that SILV, very loved and revered ticker over in the TradFi and Metals world, is now something that people can access on chain. That's great. 4,000 Seekers being purchased with SKR is amazing. The SKR flywheel clearly works, and I think that number is only going to go up. But I have to say, Exponent V2, and here's the reason why I really, really like it. Terrible things happened in October 2025. Terrible things happened in April 2026. And both of these were wake-up call moments for, I think, DeFi specifically. We were talking with Hasib a couple of weeks ago. He said, look, non-financial crypto is dead because DeFi has won. Yet we've had these massive hurdles, these sort of inflection points, if you will. And now people are realizing how important it is to have solid vaults, solid on-chain strategies that people can just go and deposit money into safely. I'm hesitating to use the word safe here, but on-chain yield is a very, very important component of DeFi, and we need to solve this problem of people underwriting 100% risk for 4% upside. It's just not a sustainable model. People are going to go elsewhere. People would rather trade Pokemon cards and sneakers, right, than risk 100% of their money for 4% upside. So that's why I'm going to go with strategy vaults. Exponent V2 is something that I'll be exploring. Over to you guys. What are your favorites?
Yep, I love the Exponent one too. I was going to go with that one, but since you went with it,
sorry,
I'm gonna skip over. I'm gonna go to the Seeker devices because I was one of the 4,000 that bought a new Seeker with the Seeker token. So I am part of that flywheel. I mean, it was a good deal. How could I pass up a deal? I think it was like 50% off.
No brainer.
Yep.
Yeah. What are you thinking, Finn?
Look, I also want to go Exponent V2 because I am a massive advocate of exchange rate trading. I think this is something completely untapped on Solana. We all need to be doing a bit more of it. I think there's going to be massive opportunities for people who get their toes dipped into this as soon as possible. But in the interest of not all saying Exponent V2 is the most exciting thing on this list, I'm going to switch it up a bit. I'm going to go with Orca, actually. So Orca launching permissionless RWA trading infrastructure, I think is very cool, right? Because look, prop AMMs are dominating volume, but there's a lot of opacity with prop AMMs. You know, there isn't a front end. We're putting our money into a black box. We don't really know where it's going to go. Orca is taking the other approach. They're doing permissioned RWA trading infrastructure. So regulated tokens can be traded on a front end through KYC wallets. It's not very, quintessential classic DeFi, but it's a new product vertical, and it's something that I think is worth exploring for traditional AMMs, while prop AMMs are really dominating volume share at the moment. So look, good to see them not necessarily pivot, but good to see them expand their product suite a wee bit. So I'm going to go with Orca.
Very interesting. I would have guessed that you might pick Umbra because, good product, good team, good tech. We like them, but it totally makes out that you went with Orca. Now, as you can see here, quick reminder that you can get 8% APY on your Sol through Sanctum's Solana mobile app. It's already live on the Seeker. And if you don't have a Seeker, then you can go to the Sanctum website and sign up to the iOS and Android waitlists. Moving on, though, to the stat of the week. Jupiter predicts spot volume. Last week, we were talking about Jupiter. Or was it the week before? It's every week there's a Jupiter announcement. But last week, I think it was, we were talking about the No, it was 2 weeks ago because we mentioned it to Hasib. You can now bet on the tournament runs of professional poker players on Jupiter. I find that a fascinating innovation opportunity. So it's the Titan tournament. I think it's live already, but go and check that out if you haven't. Finn, what's going on here with Jupiter Predict spot volume? It seems to be rising.
Jupiter Predict spot volume is about to hit its third consecutive month of all-time high volumes. So I think this is fantastic because Solana has failed so far in the prediction market sector. You spoke a lot with Mark from Polygon on this yesterday. Prediction markets are one of the biggest verticals that we've seen come out of the past 2 years, and Solana is horrendously behind on it. Now, I know that Jupiter Predict is powered by Kalshi, so this isn't technically a Solana native prediction market, but the fact that people are on Jupiter and they're trading on Jupiter's prediction market shows that people who are trading on Solana want this kind of product. It shows growing demand for this kind of product, and the floor is wide open for a talented team to step in and provide a true Solana native prediction market experience. So, look, the traders are there. Build the app that can drive value to Solana in doing so.
And state of Solana in a tweet. This one's a bit salty. This rubbed me the wrong way. I'm also a little bit inclined to disagree, if I may be so blunt. I don't agree with this, but then again, the guy does run one of the OG on-chain security platforms. So who am I to comment? Finn, what's going on here? Why is Manuel salty?
So for context, Manuel was the founder or co-founder of OpenZeppelin, which is one of the largest open source security standards over in the EVM world. I looked into the numbers of the amount of value that OpenZeppelin is securing, and it's absolutely staggering. It's probably the biggest security standard in all of crypto. Manuel is saying, public service announcement, I now consider all of DeFi unsafe. Coding agents are superhuman at finding vulnerabilities, and smart contract security is too asymmetric. Defenders need to fix every bug, while attackers need just one exploit to steal funds. I've been privately advising friends and family to exit all DeFi positions, including low-risk blue chips like Aave, MakerDAO, and Compound. So TLDR, AI coding agents are coming to steal your money. Get your funds out of DeFi. Is this alarmist? I don't know. Thomas, knee-jerk reaction.
Knee-jerk reaction is, I think some of it probably is not coming back, right? Like low risk, low yield stuff, like putting all of your funds at risk for 2-3%, like doesn't make sense, So maybe that's not coming back. And I mean, there's going to be serious security issues that we're going to be facing. So, I think that there will be winners and losers, but this is going to be, in the short term, a pretty big thing that we need to all focus on and find what works, right? So I think the teams that are going to be addressing this and going after it right now are going to be the big winners, right? And we've made a ton of progress. I think Solana DeFi has done, fantastic over the last couple of years. We've had our hiccups, yes, but I think that, through each one of these, we can all grow and see, fill up any holes that there are. And I think that that's what's going to move us forward, actually.
Here's the issue that I have with this, right? Yes, it's alarmist. And yes, if there's anyone we should listen to about DeFi security, it's the guy who spent so much time and been paid to by some of the biggest names in the industry to secure value on chain. If he says, hang on, guys, there's a bit of a problem here, we should probably listen to him. However, we also talk to people about the quantum threat. We talk to them about how it is necessarily an existential threat for cryptography. And a vast majority of those people who have done the time and the research, Vitalik Buterin included, seem to think that with enough mind power and compute, DeFi can become quantum resistant, right? They see DeFi existing in a post-quantum world. So how is it that we haven't figured out smart contract risk in 2026, yet everyone's confident that quantum computing is, in some scenario, not an existential risk? That's the two sort of squares that I can't really circle at the moment, circles that I can't square at the moment. There we go. It's not a good time to be on chain. It's not a good time to put all your money in DeFi. Yet there has to come a point where we deal with smart contract risk. There has to come a point where we are post-quantum as an industry. Who's going to get us there? I don't know.
Look, we are about to approach an inflection moment with this because Anthropic is going to release Mythos to the general public in the next few weeks. And that's going to be a make or break to see whether, it is as powerful as they say. Are we going to have DeFi hacks at unprecedented scale, or is it all actually going to be a bit overblown and life is going to continue as normal? Maybe Mythos gets released, There's no, slew of terrible hacks, and people realize that actually DeFi is pretty cool, and oil prices start going up again.
Well, it's either that or you're
I'm calling
putting
it.
cash under a mattress.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I'm calling Mythos was overrated. I think they ran out of compute and they just kind of went full doomer on everybody. But we will see. I hope that's the case.
Well, wasn't it? The story came out in the last 24 hours. One unnamed company, which may or may not have been AWS in the end, spent $500 million on compute.
Yeah,
because somebody forgot to put a spend limit on Claude tokens. Right? Is that true? Was that clickbait?
I
can't verify. Sorry.
I assume it was true. So
that's the kind of story that is absolutely crazy. And if AWS, with all of its technical gigabrains, is failing to put a cap on their spend, then yeah, who's to know what Mythos is really capable of? I'm gonna argue / predict / hope and touch wood at the same time that it is a little bit overblown. The risk. I would like to think that Anthropic doesn't want to nuke the economy from which it is raising, what, 95 billion in the last raise, right? They've overtaken OpenAI in terms of valuation now. So surely they have a vested interest in not nuking the entire economy. That's the logic.
Yeah, and you just have to get paid for the risk, right? Like, 3%, right. Like it's not worth it. But if you're getting, 250% yield or something, then, maybe it's worth it, right?
Right. Let's do a very, very quick recap. I feel like we've gone on so many different tangents, and I want to remind people that it's not all doom and gloom. Finn, you and I were discussing whether or not we should have that in the end of the newsletter, and I said, yeah, do it. It's fine. And now that we've had this conversation, I'm a little bit anxious. So let me remind people of why we're here, right? This has been your week in Solana, the largest crypto hackathon in history, 2,587 off the top of my head hackathon submissions. That is insane. The growth is up and to the right. It was 91 submissions in 2021. So people are arguing that AI devs are going to be everything. AI is sort of eating everyone's lunch. That is not the case. I assure you. We've got another validator governance fight that's going on. You can read Finn's article if you want more details on that. Smaller validators are sort of feeling the pinch a little bit. Pump.fun's going multi-chain. People are saying it's net positive. Other people aren't. Read the article. We had an amazing, amazing conversation yesterday with Polygon Labs CEO Mark. He has some huge plans for bringing all money on chain. Go and listen to that. Some serious alpha in that call about the future of Polymarket and Polygon as well. Meanwhile, Solana finally outpacing Hyperliquid in foreign token spot volume. We love to see it. Something that took me by surprise. Collector Crypt reached an eye-watering $1 billion of trading volume on chain on Solana. Solstice, meanwhile, at a $500 million TVL. SoFi bringing 14.7 million banking customers on chain, potentially with a stablecoin that settles on Solana. So huge week. My final question for the both of you, though, is it going to be an even bigger weekend, or can I finally have just a couple of days of calm where I'm not constantly glued to CT?
I'm ready for a weekend of chaos, personally. I don't know. I feel like the vibes out there in the markets at the moment are telling me that something's going to happen this weekend. I don't know what it's going to be, but yeah, I'm on edge.
Yeah, the weekends are for global chaos, Jack. Come on. I
know.
I don't know. I think things are going to calm down. I'm ready to have a good weekend myself. The kids are at the zoo right now. We're heading to the beach this weekend. Why not?
Maybe it was wishful thinking with Trump in the White House moving military assets into the Caribbean to expect that it might be a calm weekend. Maybe wishful thinking. But ladies and gents, head to SolanaFloor.com, subscribe to Finn's newsletter. It's the best. It's free. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to laugh. It's good. Next Thursday, we are back with The Big Picture at 11 a.m. Eastern. We're talking to Gito. Lucas is going to grace us, and he's going to tell us all about JTX and the amazing work that Gito is doing on the trading front, on the infra front. It's an unmissable episode, I promise you. Come in and listen to that. Next week, Friday, of course, we're going to be doing this same time, 11 a.m. Eastern, your weekly recap. But next week, Tuesday, June 2nd, we are going to be talking with Emmett from Solana Mobile. Now that, I promise you, is going to be an incredible episode. We're going to dive deeper into the Solana Mobile ecosystem than anyone ever has before. We're going to talk about why you as a user should explore everything that's being done, why as a developer you need to keep pushing, and why as a potential developer it is simply the best distribution method that you have available to you across the Solana ecosystem. So be there. Any final words, gents?
No.
It's have a good weekend.
Crazy
Excellent.
weekend.
I will see you
long
all.
Your longs, short your shorts.
Long your longs, short your shorts, and make sure you're there on Tuesday for the first episode of Shipped with Emmett. Take care, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Cheers, Jack.